Hello everybody, welcome back. As always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ Knitting podcast, and this is episode 27. This is a podcast or a vlog or like a video diary of everything that I have been knitting this week. And yeah, I've had like a bit of an influx of new subscribers, so welcome, thank you so much. It is lovely to have you here. But yes, I hope you've all had a wonderful week and got lots of knitting done, or crochet, sewing, any kind of crafting, spent some time outside, that kind of thing. And yes, so I have one finished object to talk about today, and I have 4 whips, 2 of which are new cast-ons. And yeah, no acquisitions this week, but again, some plans for the week going forward. I would usually be wearing my finished object, but it is currently like 30 degrees in my house, Celsius. I'm not sure what that is Fahrenheit. I will do some kind of conversion, as I usually do, because I'm aware that quite a lot of you don't live in the UK or anywhere that works in Celsius and you work in Fahrenheit, and I find it as useful as a chocolate teapot to find out what the temperature is in Fahrenheit, because I don't understand it in the same way that a lot of people don't do Celsius. Either way, I'm already rambling. It is hot here at the moment. It is very, very hot. We are going through a bit of a heat wave. And as lovely as it is, it's just too hot to wear 100% wool items at the moment. And yeah, so I am not wearing my finished object, but I will get into it now. So my finished object of this week is my Monica Geller tee, which just looks a bit like this. There we go. Oh, the sleeve. There we are. Like I said, I do have B-roll of this, which I will pop up in a minute, which of me actually wearing this, and it was quite a quite a feat putting this on and sort of modelling it in my garden with the very, very strong sun. Despite the fact that it is like 9:30 in the morning, it is already heating up. So yes, it was quite warm outside in this, hence why I am not wearing it. But yes, this is the Monica Geller tee, which is a pattern by Sari Nordlund, and I knit mine up in Folk Fingering in the colourway Holt. Bit of a disclaimer, one of the skeins of yarn that I used to knit this was sent to me by my friend Laura, who is the dyer maker entrepreneur behind Folk Yarn Studios. So yeah, she did send me one of the skeins to try out. To be honest, I wholeheartedly recommend this yarn. I absolutely love it. I want to use it for absolutely everything. It was such a joy to work with. And I knit this up on 3.5 and 4mm needles, and I used 136 grams for size 2. However, I did make a couple of modifications. I added in 8 extra stitches for the body to give me a little bit more positive ease, which I then decreased at the underarm shaping. And then I also changed all of the ribbing from 1x1 twisted rib into 2x2 standard rib. So that just looks a little bit like that. And then I did that on the sleeves and also on the neckband. Collar. So yeah, I had an absolute blast knitting this. It took me like next to no time at all. I found it really addictive. It is a bottom up t-shirt pattern, and the gauge on this is a relatively open gauge for a t-shirt, for a fingering weight pattern. It is recommended fingering weight yarn. I tested out multiple different brands of fingering weight yarn to knit this up, and the Folk was the only one that I've managed to actually get gauge and get a fabric that was dense enough for me to be able to wear it on its own, because it is a very open gauge for fingering weight. So it's 20 stitches by 28 rows. Now my usual like fingering weight gauge is closer to sort of like 24 stitches per 10 centimeters for like a, not even like a dense fabric in fingering weight, but a fabric that I am happy with to be opaque enough that I can wear it with just like an undergarment, like just a bra or whatever underneath it, without it kind of like showing everything I've got. So yeah, 20 stitches was definitely, it was not obtainable with a lighter fingering weight yarn. However, because this yarn is so kind of round and it puffs up beautifully and blooms so nicely, I managed to get a fabric that I'm more than happy with. Like, I think that everyone agreed that this is with like bright sunlight and like just bare skin underneath the t-shirt, that you can't see through it at all. And actually it's got a lot of structure to it. It's a really well structured yarn. So it's 60% Romney, 20% Suffolk and 20% BFL. So it's really, really bouncy, and it's just an absolutely stunning yarn to work with. And to be honest, I think if you wanted to, you could even use the fingering weight as a light DK because of the amount it blooms. I haven't done anything special to this. I just used my usual method to block. I put it in some sort of warm to hot water. I always whinge about colour bleed, but actually it's my own fault when the colour bleeds, because I probably wash my woolen slightly warmer than they need to be washed. I sort of just put the hot tap on and some wool wash in the bowl and fill it up, and it's almost, I make it so that it's bearable for me to put my finger in it to put the actual garment in the water, but then I don't move it at all. And I do find that like the warmer water does make things bloom a little bit nicer, a little bit more so than colder water. But to be honest, it's not that much of a difference that you could really sort of see that much much of a difference. I just prefer to use the warmer water. Also because I tend to reuse my blocking water, so I'll block like a new garment, and then if the colour doesn't bleed too much, then I will reuse that water. And I don't know, I'm sure it's just a thing in my head, but cold water doesn't really seem like it's gonna like get dirt or odours or anything out of stuff. And it's usually socks that I put in afterwards, and socks get a lot of wear in this house, and so I want them to be washed in semi-warm water to get any dirt or anything that we've like trodden in around the house. I have dogs, and so they bring bits of the garden in. Anyway, we're getting too far into this. So yes, this is my Monica Geller, and the only thing that I would say I'm not particularly happy with is the shape of my neckline. It's a bit square at the bottom, which I think is a me thing. I think it's to do with my pickup. And it is something that I would like to kind of readdress if I knit this again, which I would like to knit again. I would like to knit myself a white one, but probably not until later in the year, because I'm not sure that I'm really going to get much wear out of this at the moment. It is way too hot to wear it. At the moment it is just, yeah, and to be honest, it's too hot to wear wool at the moment. I'm even struggling with my socks because it is so warm. But yes, a set-in sleeve. I did Did I shorten my sleeves? Yes, I shortened my sleeves by 2 centimetres. Otherwise I knit them completely to pattern, and I just changed the ribbing to a 2x2 rib, and I did 2 inches of 2x2 ribbing, and then I just did a tubular bind off. I also added in a tubular cast on at the bottom, and rearranged my stitches. I used the Andrea Mowry tutorial for rearranging stitches. I will put a link to that down below. But yeah, other than that, I'm really, really happy with this, and I will happily have more in my wardrobe. I think it's going to be a really good staple piece. I'm glad I added in extra stitches around the body, because otherwise I think I wouldn't have as good amount of positive ease. And I like the fact that it's got positive ease around the body, and then sort of the sleeves haven't got negative ease. I'd say they've got maybe a centimetre or so of positive ease, but it's definitely not as much as around the body, and to be honest, I quite like that contrast. I think that the shoulders sit in a perfect spot on me, and I'm very, very happy about that. So I used 136 grams of the folk, and that works out at about 544 metres, so that includes all of the mods that I made. I did shorten the body by about a centimetre as well, so yeah, take that into account when working out if you're using my yarn measurements. But yes, I had 2 skeins of the foot fingering weight Folk in the colour Holt, and this is what I have left of my second skein, so I've still got a fair amount in there. I think I've got just over half a skein, so yeah, enough in there to do something else with. Maybe use it as a contrast in some kind of colour work, but that'll be going back into my stash. And so I cast this on June the 6th, I cast it off on June the 22nd, and it was on my needles for 19 days. So really not very much time at all. And quite a lot of that, it was kind of sat still because it took me a long time to pick it up to do the collar and the second sleeve because I was working on other things. But you know, that's how it works out around here sometimes. So cost wise, the pattern cost me £5.29 and the yarn is £18 per skein. I used 2, so yarn costs would be £36. However, because I was gifted one of these skeins by my friend Laura, which I'm very, very grateful for, I only bought one. And so the total cost, if you were to knit this, would be £41.29. However, I only paid for one skein of yarn, so my cost for my records is £23.29. So yeah, I mean, I would consider it more of like a cropped sweater than an actual t-shirt. I think if I was to knit it in a more kind of like summer friendly yarn, then I think it would be an absolutely wonderful t-shirt pattern to have. But because I wanted it as more as, like I say, a cropped sweater, mine is not really wearable at the moment, but I absolutely love it. I think I'm going to get so much wear out of it when the weather cools down a bit more, and I can't wait to be able to wear it. Anyway, so yeah, those were my finished objects, my Monica Geller tee, and let's get into some whips. I feel like we can tell how hot it is by the fact that I don't have a cup of tea today. I have just got water. It is really, really warm. Right, so whip number 1 is my colour tip tee, which is a pattern by Emily Curtis, and this is something that I'm knitting up for my husband. And I'm using a 3.25mm needle and a 3mm needle. Yeah, and I am using Sandnes Garn Tin Pigment in the colour 1042. And I have done completely custom sizing for this. So I have used size 7 for the shoulder width, size 8 for the yoke depth, size 5 for the neck shaping and the neck ribbing, and so I've cast on stitches so that it's somewhere between sizes 3 and 4 for the body, for the body. Oh, and I also used size 5 for the sleeve pickup, and then did my own custom decreases. I will make sure that I have everything detailed in my Ravelry project page, in case you do want to knit a long sleeve custom size version of this, just to say kind of what sizes I used and everything, and what decrease rates I used for the sleeve. But yeah. So I've made a little bit of progress on this, not that much. Other things kind of took priority this week, and yeah, this kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. But to be perfectly honest, my husband's not going to be able to wear this until it cools down because it is so hot at the moment. How many times am I going to talk about how hot it is? But yeah, so I wasn't sort of in desperate need of getting through this. But either way, since last week I have added an extra centimetre to the end of the sleeve, just to get that to the full length that I needed it to. I have not added in the ribbing. I've not added in the ribbing on the bottom of the sleeve because we are going to be blocking this before I do any of the finishings. So I've added the collar. If I hold this up now. So I have added the collar this week, so that we can get a bit more of an accurate view of sort of where everything is sitting. But before I add on the ribbing at the bottom of the sleeves and the bottom of the body, I will be blocking it to check the length on those, because I hate having to undo, and I don't like having to like cut into my knitting and then Kitchener it back together. It doesn't sit right with me for like the sort of structural integrity of the garment, especially when I'm knitting for my husband, because he does wear his knits a lot, and I think only his knits have had, apart from socks, have had like casualties in the elbows and things where they've worn through. So I don't like to kind of fiddle about with it too much. I prefer to kind of make sure it's perfect the first time without having to go back into it, essentially. So yes, this week I have also added in the collar, and a bit of a last minute addition was to add like a contrast top to the collar. And so this is Folk Fingering in the colour Alton Broad, which I had in my stash. I actually have it ready to knit a cardigan for my daughter. So I pinched a little bit of that. I knew that I was going to have more yarn than I needed for that cardigan, so I pinched a little bit of it to pop in here just to add a little bit more interest into this. And I will do exactly the same. So I'll do the bind off on the end of the cuffs and also on the end of the body in the blue as well, just for a bit of fun. So the way that I did this was that I picked up the stitches for size 5 for the collar. It is pulling in a little bit, but I think it's mainly because it just needs to be blocked. I did go down a needle size, which is not what the pattern suggests, but the pattern does suggest twisted rib, and I just did standard rib. And I always find that twisted rib pulls in a little bit more than standard ribbing, and so I don't really have any, I'm not concerned that this isn't going to block out. And I did want it to pull up a little bit more because it was sitting quite wide before, and so I think this should correct that. And so I did also lengthen the ribbing. I think in the pattern it's 2 inches or 5 centimeters. So you knit 5 centimeters and then obviously fold it, so it'd be like 2.5 on each side. I made mine slightly taller, so I did 3 centimeters in the grey of 1x1 rib, and then I knit 1 round in the blue so that we wouldn't get a jog where the pearl bumps are, and it would be nice and straight. And then I did, so yeah, then I did 3 rounds of 1x1 rib in the blue, and then I changed back to the grey and knit around so that I again wouldn't get those wouldn't see the pearl bumps on the inside, on the outside. And then I did another 3 centimeters in grey in 1x1 ribbing, and then I picked up one of the cast on stitches and knit it together and then bound off to fold it over, and I think it sat quite well. You can't see any more of the grey in there, you can only see the blue at the top, and I like the fact that I haven't got any sort of, what am I trying to say? I like the fact that you can't see the pearl bump. I think adding in those knit rounds has really helped the look of this and made it look a little bit more kind of professional. Apologies, my needle is whacking against the tripod. But yeah, that is what that looks like. And so going forward on this, I will be picking up the stitches for the second sleeve and knitting the second sleeve, and then it will be back to the body. So yeah, I was going to get my husband to try this on. I know I said that I was going to do this last week, but to be perfectly honest, it's so hot, I don't really want to put him through that. So, I mean, eventually I will get him to try it on. I will obviously get him to try it on once it's finished anyway, but it's one thing to kind of make me feel really, really hot and sweaty in this weather in knitwear, but it's another thing to kind of drag other people into that. So, yeah. But either way, I cast this on May the 6th, so it has currently been on my needles for 50 days. And that is my colour tip tee. Whip number 2 is my socks for the month of June. Not May, I think I said May last week. But they are my socks for the month of June. And they are the Trompe Le Monde socks by Summer Lee. And this is a pattern from her book, Sock Project. And I am using Lang Javel in the colour 184 and the colour 109. And I used a 2mm needle for my ribbing, and then I've used a 2.25 for my main body. And I was, I had just done the heel flap last week, so here we are. This is sock 1, and so I have now finished sock 1, and I absolutely love it. So now I have done the heel turn, I did the gusset decreases, and then I knit the foot, and I just did the wedge toe that was recommended in the pattern. I absolutely love this. This is so cute. And yeah, it was so quick to knit. I think I knit most of it actually whilst I was editing last week's podcast. It's quite mindless once you get through the gusset decreases. I did make sure to keep the marker in after I finished the gusset decreases on the other side. Obviously I always have, because I've been knitting these on short circulars, I always have one for the beginning of round, but I kept the one in for the other side to make sure I could knit them without really looking and still remember where the stockinette portion went for the underside of the foot. But yeah, there we go. And then this is what the top of the foot looks like in this lovely slip stitch pattern. So it's an 8 round repeat, relatively quick and easy. And so yeah, finished sock 1, and then I also managed to get quite far into, oh dear, hang on, this is not wanting to come out of the bag. There we go. And then I also managed to start the heel flap on sock 2. So I have done all of my 2x1 ribbing, and I've done the leg, and I have started the heel flap. So I will just be working through that, and then I should hopefully have these finished fairly soon. I'm really enjoying this pattern now. I kind of stalled on it for a little while. But it is actually relatively quick and easy to knit, and I think the slip stitch pattern is really fun. It's really easy to memorise. I've barely had to look at the pattern. To be honest, I took this in the car with us yesterday. So we went to the zoo, and I knit most of this in the car on the way to and from the zoo. So it is so mindless that I can do it without looking now. And I really like that in a sock. I like that there is enough interest in this that it's not just plain vanilla, but I like the fact that I can knit it without really looking or thinking about it. And even with the heel flap, I've managed to kind of remember what I need to do without needing to look back at the pattern. So I am still knitting these on small circulars. I've just got a longer needle in there to do the heel flap, and then the rest of my front stitches are sat on my small circular still. I am definitely leaning more into my small circulars for sock knitting at the moment. I'm sure I will flip back to magic loop at some point, but I'm just finding my gauge a little bit more reliable on these small circulars, and also I just like how quick it is, and I like the fact that I don't really need to sort of move my needles about too much when I'm out and about or when I'm sat editing. So yeah, that is where I am with those. And I cast these on due the 1st, so they have currently been on my needles for 24 days. And I don't expect them to be on my needles for much longer. I definitely will have to have them done by the end of June because I need to cast on July's sock. But also I want to wear them because they are such a lovely pink. Perfect for this time of year. Although maybe not when it's like 30 degrees. I know like lots of other countries and lots of other people are probably like, oh, she's whinging on and it's only like 30 degrees, but that's like normal for us. It is not really all that normal here, and we went from like 15 to like 26 almost overnight, which is the thing that shocks me the most. I am just not built for hot weather. I much prefer it cold. So moving on to whip number 3 and into my new cast-ons. So first up, I have got my honey bucket bag, which is a pattern by Petite Knit. And I cast this on because initially I knit the Marie clutch, which I will put a link to the episode I talk about that in down below. I can't remember which number it was. So yeah, initially I knit the Marie clutch because we are going to a wedding, and I used this for a christening, and I like it, but it does kind of give me like wash bag vibes. And so I think it's because it is not as structured as I maybe thought it could be. And so I wanted something that was a little bit more dressy for the wedding. And I already had the honey bucket bag pattern in my library. And so I decided that I was going to give it a go. I have tried this pattern a couple of times and I just couldn't get my head around the honeycomb brioche. I love knitting regular brioche. And I thought, oh, honeycomb brioche can't be that much more tricky. It was. I couldn't get my head around it. And I think it was more of a me thing. I wanted to kind of default into the methodical knitting of brioche, which honeycomb brioche is not as methodical. I have to keep looking back at this pattern. I can't get like the actual brioche rounds I can do. It's the right side rounds where you have to knit and slip the stitches. That is what confuses me. I just can't remember which one needs to go where, and so I have to keep looking back at the pattern. But I think that's more of a me thing. I find it really easy to do normal brioche. It is just because each row is different, and I just find it like my brain just can't. It gets through one and then it completely forgets what it's done. And so I have to then keep looking back, which is fine. It's not a problem. Yeah, I'm still enjoying knitting it. It's just different to when I knit regular brioche. And so I am using Woolly Knit British Wool 4-ply, which is left over from a jumper I knit for my husband at Christmas. And I'm using the colour cream, and that just looks like this. This was on a cone, but I just caked up what I had left because it's easier to kind of carry around than the cone. And then I am also using Drops Kid Silk in the colour Off-White. So together they look like this. And this is how far I have got so far. So you can see that like the creaminess of the woolly knit is definitely showing through, but it is being somewhat kind of muted and made like slightly more white by the slightly cooler, I think, by the Kid Silk. And I've gone up a needle size to a 2.2, is it a 2.25 that I'm using? Yeah, a 2.75 needle for this. And I also didn't use the mohair on the base. So my base is knit with 2 strands of the Woolly Knit British Wool held double. And then the rest of it is knit with 1 strand of the Woolly Knit and 1 strand of mohair. Because I wanted the base to be a little bit more sturdy, I thought if I'm going to be putting this down a lot, I'm probably going to want a little bit more of sort of like a structured base there instead of the kind of much more sort of floppy fabric from the Kid Silk and the wool held together. So yeah, it's my base is kind of sticking out a little bit because it is 2 strands of fingering held together instead of a strand of fingering and a strand of mohair, but I think it will be fine once I've like sewn the lining in and also sewn in my ends, because I used the pinhole cast on that I usually use for my Musselburgh hats, which I did use a tutorial by Knitty Natty, so I will also have that video linked down below. And that always kind of sticks up until you sew in the end, and then it kind of flattens itself down anyway. So yeah, I have finished the base and I have got about 1 centimetre left of the actual kind of like sides / main body of the bag, and then I believe I haven't looked too far into the pattern, but I believe I have to knit some stockinette for the kind of like channel for the drawstring after this, and then there's a bit more honeycomb brioche, and then I'm not really sure where I need to go from there. So yeah, I mean, it's come on quite far. I'm really into the swing of it now. So there are 2 options in this pattern for sizes. I'm knitting the smaller size, and it's like a regular and a large. I'm knitting the regular. And there are also 2 options as to how you knit the honeycomb brioche. So there's one where you kind of essentially knit it back and forth, but you anchor your stitches so it is always in the round. Or there is another option where you knit it in the round. Both give you a seam up the middle. I chose to do the one where you're kind of knitting it backwards and forwards, just so that I could kind of, I don't know, I think the other times I tried this, I did try knitting it on a small circular, like a 16-inch circular, and it just didn't work out for me. So I thought if I do the turns, then I can use a longer needle and I will always know where my beginning of round is, and I can just anchor the stitch, and then it is just backwards and forwards essentially. And it has worked out really, really well for me. So they are also the first instructions written in the pattern, so I guess that's kind of what she suggests, but gives the other option anyway in case you want to do it that way. But yeah, I think this is going really well this time, and I'm really happy with how it's turning out, to be honest. I think it looks so nice, and I think it's going to look really, like, a little bit more dressy than this one when I'm at this wedding. So yeah, I don't really have much more else to say, to be honest. I'm very happy with it. I didn't realise how big it was going to be. As far as I can tell, my gauge is on, like, is what is stated in the pattern, but yeah, it just seems a lot bigger. But I think it's because it's kind of spread out a lot more. Like, if I pull these in tight to sort of replicate what the drawstring's going to look like, then yeah, I don't think it is as big as I necessarily, as it is, I don't think it is going to be this big. I think it's going to look a lot more kind of cinched in, and more like that. But yeah, I think it's going to look really nice. So I cast this on June the 18th, and so it's currently been on my needles for 7 days. So yeah, I am on, oh dear, I am on a deadline with this. I need to get it done. So the wedding that I am going to is in about a week, in about a week and a half, so I need to get wiggle on with this. So yeah, that is my honey bucket bag. And that brings me to my last whip. So my last whip is something that I cast on because I needed something kind of fairly mindless to start on, and I'm now going to be putting it down for quite a while. I started knitting the Serkinet Cardigan, which is a pattern by DAVIES Designs, and I am going to be knitting size 2, and I'm using Drops Daisy in the colour Pistachio Cream. This yarn was gifted to me by Hobby Jobby, who are an online craft retailer. I am an affiliate with them, and so I will have my affiliate link down below, but they have like a really good selection of yarns. They have stuff for cross stitch. I believe they have like some crochet bits as well, but they have loads of online craft stuff. It's a really good place to kind of check out if you are looking for anything to enhance your crafting supplies. So I'm using a 3mm and a 3.25mm to knit this, and it's like a bottom up, all over twisted stitch cable design with balloon sleeves and a round neck and twisted rib accents. And so I cast on size 2, and I have like done what, not even 2 centimeters of twisted rib. Sorry, it goes that way up, doesn't it? Because it's bottom up. And so yeah, not really made much progress at all. I did find it quite difficult to get this cast on because I did swatch. So this is my swatch, and I swatched on a 3.25mm needle because the gauge in the pattern, so they don't give you recommended needle sizes. They just say that like this is the gauge you need, and we recommend starting on a 4mm needle. Now the gauge in the pattern, I knew I wasn't going to get on a 4mm needle. I knew that I was going to have to go down. So I thought, okay, well, if I go down to a 3.25 and that's too tight, then I know I need to either go up to a 3.5 or a 3.75. And so that was where I picked my starting point, because I knew that that was going to kind of get me quite close to gauge, and so I could then make any adjustments from there. This is where I started. So I started on a 3.5, and I knew that that was going to be way too open a gauge. I was going to be way off. I had way too few stitches. Yeah, I had way too few stitches per 10 centimeters even before I blocked it. So then I went down to a 3.25, and that is kind of where I found my found that I hit gauge, although my row gauge is off. So I am considering using a 3.25 for my knit rounds and then a 3.5 for my purl rounds to kind of even out my row gauge a little bit, because there is a little bit of rowing out in here. I don't know how well you can see it. And so yeah, I'm considering a 3.5 for my knit rounds, my purl rounds. Oddly enough, this pattern gets you to swatch in stockinette, despite the fact that it is like all over twisted rib cables, not twisted rib, all over like twisted stitch cables, which I have not done before. So we will see how that goes. But yeah, I was a little bit confused because obviously then it doesn't tell you how many needle sizes to go down for your ribbing. So I've made an assumption that I need to go down a needle size for my ribbing. I may also go down another needle size for like the ribbing on the end of the sleeves. And perhaps the button bands, I'm not sure. I'm kind of just seeing how I go. I wasn't overly fussed about what the ribbing on the body looked like, and I kind of thought that if I go down any further it's going to be really uncomfortable to knit. So I'm kind of going to just see how I go with the ribbing on the end of the body, and then if it doesn't cinch in enough, then I will have to go down another needle size, and we'll just have to kind of do it in very small increments for my hand health. I'm not sure. And I tried looking at other people's Ravelry projects and I couldn't really gauge too much from that. Some people went down one needle size, some people went down two. So I went down one needle size, and I kind of thought, well, if my row gauge is off anyway, then it maybe will sort itself out. I don't know. I used a tubular cast on, and then went straight into my 1x1 twisted rib. And like I say, I am now going to put this on hold and not knit on it for a little while, because I have some kind of time sensitive projects that I need to get done beforehand. So yeah, you may not see very much on this, if at all, for a little while, because I need to get some other bits done. So I cast this on June the 20th, and so it's currently been on my needles for 5 days, but I only knit it on that one evening. So yeah, that's where that is at the moment. And that is it for all of my knitting this week. I feel like I've waffled on for ages, mainly about how hot it is up here. But like I say, it is roasting, and so I kind of want to get out of here fairly soon. Goals going forward for the week: I want to finish my Trompe Le Monde socks. I want to finish my honey bucket bag, and I want to cast on one of the December bows that I am knitting for my daughter and my sister to wear at this wedding that we are going to. So I need to kind of get a wiggle on with those. Those are probably going to be where my focus is going to be. And so, yeah, did quite well on my goals from last week. So just as a recap, last week my goals were to finish the Monica Gellaty, finish the first of the Trompe Le Monde socks, and also to cast on the December bow. So I managed to complete my first two goals. My second one, I didn't cast on the December bow, but I did cast on the honey bucket bag, which is also for the same event. So I kind of feel like I did that. I did complete my goals. I should have set a goal to like start one of the things that I wanted to knit for the wedding. But yeah, either way, I feel like I've done well on my goals for last week, and we will see how well I do this week, so next week. But yes, do let me know what your goals are for your week of crafting, if you have any, or anything you are looking forward to casting on, anything you are loving knitting at the moment. I really do love to know. But yes, I hope you will have a wonderful week, and I will catch you up next week with more knitting. Happy making!